Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast sponsored by Jointflows. Today we have the privilege of being joined by Richard Convery, the founder and CEO of Ascendr. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you guys?
Very good, very good. It's great to have you on. I always like to get a little bit of a backstory going to begin with, so our listeners get a bigger understanding of who you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get to where you are and all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. Where do I start? Okay, well, I'll start where I am now, and maybe I'll work back a little
There you
bit.
go.
As you mentioned, founder and CEO of Ascendr. Ascendr is a customer onboarding tool, and as I was talking to you before, we're finding a couple of different use cases for this as well, not just around customer onboarding for SaaS companies, but partner onboarding and possibly even POC and pilots managing at the moment. So, the stage we're at the moment is very early stage, just trying to find market fit. And that's kind of a little bit about the company. My background, I've been in the SaaS world for about 15 years now, primarily in customer success and operational roles, but I've kind of covered a little bit of everything including a little bit of development. And I spent a couple of years on Code Academy teaching myself some technical bits. So I'm by no means a full stack developer, but it's good to be able to hold a conversation with technical people and understand these things. I think it makes you better as a customer success manager.
Absolutely.
I actually started off in finance. Then I worked with one of the dragons, the Dragon's Den, fell into software, and here I am now.
Nice.
So, that's a very, very brief history of me.
Who was the dragon?
Rachel Elnor from Red Letter Days.
Really nice.
Yeah, back in the first series. Yes.
Very good. Very good. Um, Interesting background there as well. I love having people on with a CS and ops background as well, just because, when you look at the landscape now, so much from a revenue perspective has now been put on the CS account management function as well.
Yeah,
Easier to
absolutely.
expand once you have a foot through the door than it is to build pipeline from scratch, as it were. What are you seeing as good strategies to deploy that? One of the conversations I like talking about, and hopefully you do too, is how do you put together a good framework for expansion? What does that look like? Because obviously it's a big focus area at the moment.
I think one topic to talk about on that front is, I suppose, compensation and how
Lovely.
account managers, customer success managers, and AEs work together.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly important. That the way that you compensate people is going to drive behaviors, both good and bad. So if you want to foster great relationships between, call it post-sales and pre-sales teams, you've got to have skin in the game for both of them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in a lot of SaaS companies, a land and expand model works incredibly well. Customers want to or prospects want to de-risk, and they don't necessarily, they might not know who you are. So they'll go, okay, well, let's take 10 users. Let's take that module. Let's take a subsection of what you're offering and see how things go. Then it's then down to the onboarding team, the CSM support, everybody post sale to make sure that they've got the most amazing onboarding experience that make the expansion the obvious choice. So what you don't really want to do is kind of push like AEs to try and get the customer to bite off more than they can chew, because I think that can put up barriers to sale. But also you want to make sure that the AE's got a great relationship with those handling stuff pre-sale, so that they can be brought back in, and AE's getting paid on growth as well. So I think that's a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, I always find that building and not everybody agrees with this, but a very binary process is important, just because in these kind of scenarios, the water can get really murky. Who's supposed to be doing what when it comes to expansion, and off the back of that, then who gets compensated? Because not many businesses that I speak to have got an effective compensation plan in place that looks after all the stakeholders who are involved in that expansion either.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just you've got to be clear. Come up with the different scenarios that are going to happen. Like if you get a customer in and they're going to go for the 100% big bang from the word go, great. What if it's a land and expand? Who's going to be involved? How are they going to be involved? And get it all down on paper. Make sure the teams understand it and they know where they're working.
Absolutely.
There are quite a few conversations at the moment around who's responsible for the upsells and who should be driving them, specifically around commissions. So what's your view on this? Should it be a customer success task or should it be an account management task?
The way that I've worked the best and got the best results is where you keep the relationship with the AE, right? So basically you might be, the company might be double paying in commissions and that commission rate may change. But yeah, those are the ones where the AE still kind of manages the some of the commercial conversation. The CSM or account manager might be there to unearth the opportunities and bring them to the table.
Yeah.
But they're also there to look after the customer. And I think it's good in a lot of examples where the customer success manager can be there to be the, how do I put them, the you're not quite independent, right? But at least perhaps the perception of being independent of those commercial conversations from the customer's point of view, they can confide in you and they know that you're there to solve their problems. Growing, they'll understand that even from a CSM's perspective, growing the account is part of their job. But it might be secondary to just making sure they're happy and helping and that the customer's getting the value from the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. One of the things that's interesting to cover off as well is what the framework for that expansion actually looks like as well. So how is it that you identified as a requirement for it? What kind of prep work goes into it? Have you seen of or implemented any kind of playbooks that you feel work well in this case?
Well, you still got to treat it like a new sale in some respect. Whenever you come across cross-sell or upsell, you've got to qualify it. You can't just go, somebody said something on an email and just launch it across and hope you get some commission on it. Like from a BDR's perspective, they've got to qualify these things. They've got to make sure they go through jumping through those hoops to make sure that, I suppose, everybody is spending their time in the right areas. Because you guys would have come across this before, right? Something's not qualified, and then you, from pre-sales or post-sale, you spend a lot of time wasted on the wrong things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that it's still part of the CSM's role to kind of do that, a little bit of the BDR thing, so in terms of qualifying, a little bit of the closing, kind of like an AE, but they're not primarily responsible for those things. You're there to enable the AE, you're there to enable the customer. You're kind of, somebody said it to me a couple of years ago, you're kind of playing that quarterback role, that center mid. You're just a playmaker.
Yeah.
From all sides.
Yeah, I love a football analogy. So you there you go. It's interesting what you said there, that maybe the customer has said something and then you might launch something across, as it were. Is there anything you think the team can do proactively to identify where these upsell, cross-sell opportunities could sit?
Couple of things. So data's good if you've got usage data in terms of number of people on the platform or consumption, be it executions or API calls or however you are kind of commercializing your offering. Customer success managers would also tend to do QBRs, and that's like the formal sit down with the economic buyer and once a quarter, or it might be not necessarily quarterly, but a business review to understand, are they getting value and where their pains are? Because once you've solved one problem, find out where the next problem is.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, like, people pay money to have problems solved. If you can keep solving problems, they're going to stick with you and hopefully pay you more money as a result. So, but I also really like getting like in front of the customer, physically in front of the customer, where possible. Make it that once a year or twice a year, you can actually get on site with the customer, which is a really weird concept. The last couple of years, we've pretty much all been remote working or hybrid at best, right? Actually having conversations face to face with people, you can have a look at body language, you can get to know them as a person, you can overhear conversations, and they'll just ask you questions that they wouldn't necessarily ask over a Teams call or over an email.
Yeah, absolutely. We're big advocates of going for the face-to-face, aren't we, Mick?
Yeah, but throughout I think it's much, but as you said, like I think you discover so much more by being close to people physically than having a screen between the two parties, and the level of distraction as well. If you're in a meeting room with someone and then there's engagement, it's much harder to zone out and go on, LinkedIn or Slack or whatever, just check if I've got a message. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Just one question around the topics of commissions and who's responsible for what. Do you feel like customer success should be responsible for the renewal target, but not the upsell cross-sell? Or should it all be with account managers?
That's it's an interesting question. I've seen it work on, in different companies for either way. Company I worked for a couple of years ago, a BI company, and the CSM did all the renewals, along with CS operations. But at other companies, I've seen it that the account executives step back in from a renewals perspective. The thing is, you've got to make sure whoever's dealing with it has got a commercial understanding and some business acumen to them, right? Sometimes CSMs are very good at helping people, and some of them might be relatively technical, but they might not have those sales skills, or they might have a fear of sales, like just talking money. Some people just aren't comfortable with it. So if you've got somebody that has got the ability to have commercial conversations, regardless of which side of the fence they sit on, then they can be involved in it, right?
Okay, so I've seen, I've never seen the right model.
It's always an argument, isn't it?
I've always seen.
It's like
I've always seen fights.
There's always someone who's feeling like they've done most of the work, and someone else is kind of reaping the rewards.
Yeah,
and vice versa. It's like, well, actually, this guy is running the relationship, and now I'm responsible for the renewal target as well as the upsell cross-sell. So it's very hard to find something that works across companies. And I think there are quite a lot of companies, and more of them are now turning into a land and expand business model, where salespeople who close the deal actually go and maintain that relationship, and of course customer success get involved, but it's much linear in the way that you always have the same point of contact, and then it's throughout your life cycle. Have you
consistency is key with that, right? Yeah.
Have you got experience on this?
Yeah, and that's how I tend to work at the moment, is that I've got AEs that I work with, and let's say we've got a fortnightly call with a customer. It's a key customer. We're talking top tier enterprise. The account executive, he doesn't really necessarily have to get involved in those calls, but he wants to be part of the relationship. You don't want to be the person who just turns up once a year and go, "Hey, it's me again. I'm gonna have your signature or have some more money."
Classic Mick move.
You've got to earn the right to have the conversation, right? So, but they also have to have trust in the customer success manager that they're going to do some of the legwork in the meantime. So it's a team game, and that's why I think it's really important to have like both sides compensated and happy with how they're being compensated. And it might be at different levels. Somebody who's more technical might be, I wouldn't say reserved. They might get a bit bitter sometimes that they don't get compensated financially as much as an AE does, and they're the ones who are able to deliver. But at the same time, if that technical person isn't able to make a sale, there's no money on the table to be split anyway. Right. Yeah. Similarly, you can't have an account executive who could just kind of feel like they can command technical teams to do what they do because they can make a sale. That's what I mean. It's a team game, and you've got to have the right personalities in the company. That's how, yeah, from my point of view, that works well. But yeah, you're always going to have somebody who grumbles a little bit. So having a good management team to help squash those is going to be useful.
Very quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you guys find that from people you talk to? What's like the most common way of compensating people from like a renewals perspective? AEs, AMs, CSMs?
And this is where, from my experience and the conversations I've had, it's really murky. So typically what I used to see was obviously the AEs get compensated on bringing on the business to begin with. And for the longest time, it used to be the case that they weren't necessarily involved as much as they should have been on the maintenance and relationship of the account. However, when there was an expansion, they were drafted in to, you know, maybe resell the value to the new stakeholder or wherever it might be. And off the back of that, get compensated again. And then I've seen a shift more recently where actually that's changed now. And some people I speak to are saying, like, once the AE hands it over, that's it. It's finished, unless they can maintain a relationship with the C-suite. So the C-suite is not necessarily, or even the economic buyer, who's not necessarily the person who's involved in the everyday today, might not be in the quarterly business reviews or the monthly business reviews, but probably is going to be there on the annual business reviews. And then maintain that relationship, because that's the person who signs off the check. So off the back of that, once again, the AE gets paid. So I've never seen it work well. To my point, as I said, I just see people fight and disputes all the time. And so I couldn't tell you what works best, but I've seen every type of model I can think of, other than double compensation. I've never seen that.
You mentioned a bit. Sorry, after you.
No, I was gonna say, I think the best way to compensate and motivate anyone and get alignment in the team, unfortunately for businesses, require double compensations.
Yeah.
And I think if you penalize customer success managers on churn, then you need to reward them when the expansion happens.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you feel like your customer success manager should not have those commercial conversations, and someone from sales, I think everybody's in business now is sales, then you should be aligned with that as well. And you should have a dual compensation where there's an element of orchestrating the resource that is done at sales level, which is bringing your customer success, bringing value consulting and whatever. But anyone who's touching the account should have some sort of skin in the game to grow it.
Yeah.
Have you seen double compensation, Mick?
Yeah, but they might be at like lower levels, or it might be a split compensation.
Yeah. Also, well, that's really topical, and I guess your software helps kind of move those projects faster anyway, Richard. So there's less frustration to start with. Can you talk us
That's the
through,
idea, isn't it?
Can you talk us through the move from perhaps asking a product team to create more feature versus you being your own product team? Like, what is it like now being on the other side of the fence?
Yeah, it's difficult. As I said, I'm not a full stack developer. I've got a team of people who do the building for me, right? I suppose the last couple of weeks, I mentioned before, I'm still trying to find product market fit.
Yeah.
And so where I've got a company that I'm working with to build out their perfect processes, I am going through, I'm kind of doing requirements gathering, scoping, designing, even down to building the front end, just to kind of get through that proof of concept for them to sign off, go, yeah, this is amazing. This is gonna be great for us. It's gonna make our partners go quicker. It's gonna help us to close more deals, all these kind of great things. I'm doing all of those before I pass it on to the development team. And it's good that I've got control over where the product goes, but I don't want to be that person. It's like, I've got control, therefore it's going in my direction. I always want to make sure that people are challenging me. So even head of development from my team, right? My co-founders from the customer's perspective, I always want people to be challenging me, because I think when you get to the point where you think you know it all, right, you've got a problem, and then you are a bottleneck in that business.
Yeah.
Right, you've got to take your ego out of it, and some of the times it means you're gonna have to do, you have to rework things, you have to rethink things, and it's frustrating. You got to cover old ground, but you got to just do it. But at the end of the day, as I said, it's people pay money for you to solve their problems.
Yeah.
So I don't tell people what their problems are. I help unearth their problems, and if I can help solve it, great, let's continue the conversation. I can build some stuff to help out with that. But it's not try and push a problem onto a customer or a prospect that they just don't have. That's not going to end well. It's a waste of time for everyone.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on, a good segue from that, what are your thoughts on building a specific feature within your product that solves the problem for one customer, but it's going to be, good money for the business, which, as a startup, you want that money in, right? But it's not necessarily something that you think is going to be that beneficial for the rest of your perceived client base or your ICP, versus parking it to the side and saying, actually, we might not have generated that much revenue yet. However, it's not actually relevant for my specific ICP at the moment, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah. It depends on how headstrong you are about the direction you're going, and how big the opportunity is. It might not, thinking about the opportunity that's presented to you, it might be a lot of money that you're getting in, but it also might open doors to other markets. So you've got to consider that. Like, can I start reselling this? Are there other people that have this problem that I can start making more money from? Yeah, but you're restricted on the number of developers you've got, and you're restricted on the number of days in a week, right? I'd love to have an extra couple of days in a week just to go faster, but everybody is limited by that. Most of the time, especially early stages of business and you're growing a company, it's chase the revenue and support the customer, do whatever you can. At the end of the day, you could have a product that's perfect for your ICP, but you're not making as much money. And then you've got a bigger problem. Like, can I continue to develop? Have I got to do, cut costs, reduce headcount, versus, okay, well, this customer isn't the ICP and this isn't exactly the right use case, but everyone's getting paid and we'll be able to return money to shareholders and we can keep roofs over our head. Especially early stage business, I would chase that for sure. Yeah.
It's interesting because I've had different opinions from different people.
Well, it's hard to, as you said, like there's only so much you can do, and whatever you're doing takes on something else. Basically, it's like communicating vessels. So you have to make the right decision and think about scalability as well. From so far in your founder experience, what are the challenges that you've come across you were not necessarily expecting to see?
I think market fit was probably a big one, right? I don't profess to be all knowing in this. This is the first time that I've taken a product to market, like my own product from scratch.
Yeah.
It is interesting, right? It's fun, it's hard. So the way that I wanted to build the product is I wanted to build out the platform so the let's call it the base features worked. Think of this as a project management tool for customer success managers and onboarding consultants to help the onboarding go faster, be more efficient, reduce the amount of admin, all those kind of good things. But I also wanted to start like fundamentally from a project management perspective. So we've built a project management tool, right? So if you were to compare us to another project management tool, you would go into the platform and you go, well, I know how to use it. I know how project management tools work. And it looks good and it's simple to use and all those kind of good things. But I haven't started off with the real value adds, the things that differentiate us from a lot of the competition. So there's a balance. And maybe I've gone too far away from the differentiators. but it's left me with a really solid base to then start moving into. So that becomes difficult. So I've got a product that I think is great. It's by no means perfect. Anyone who says their product's perfect is lying, because you can improve everything, right?
Yeah.
But I think, it's then I'm kind of going out to people and going, do you want a tool like this? Can I help solve these problems? This is what we're looking to do. And the problem is, I'm saying at the moment, this is what I'm looking to do. This is what's coming. I'm trying to sell people the dream off of a good foundation. And especially at a time right now where money is tight, right? With the economic situation, even when it comes down to raising funds, it's difficult. If you want to get even down to seed funding, it's difficult. So the change in approach over the summer, where I was kind of spending a bit of money on digital advertising and getting some people to call out to contact and sell the dream, I've kind of gone away from that and call that an expensive lesson learned. And I've kind of targeted a couple of people that I know have these problems, and I'm going to solve the problem for them 100% before maybe going back to a digital advertising point of view. That's probably the biggest challenge I've had in the last 6 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. That makes sense. I think one of the things that often gets overlooked as people transition from, well, no jobs are 9 to 5 anymore, but you're 9 to 5 through to founding your own business, is the personal impact it might have in your personal life. How has your personal life changed since you've taken this on?
I think a lot less free time, a lot less time playing on the Xbox. I don't get time to do that anymore. I've got 2 kids as well, so Xbox time went a long time ago. But I think you've got to make sacrifice. So yeah, I'm married, got 2 kids, and they will always be the priority. So I've then got to, I suppose, sacrifice my downtime to work mornings, weekends, and evenings. Tends to be when they're in bed some of the time. So they'll all be tucked up by, say, 10 o'clock. Kids are in bed by 7. Wife goes to bed, and then I'm back down in the office working on whatever it might be it consultancy stuff to keep the money coming in, or speccing new things for the product, whatever it is. So you've got to make sacrifice, and you've got to work hard. And I'm at a stage right now that I've got a vision of where this is going to be in the next couple of years, and I'm prepared to make a couple of hours of a day sacrifice to help that happen. Otherwise, I'm just constantly on the corporate treadmill.
Yeah. You see, I think, so I've got the same. I've got a similar setup with 2 young kids, and I found the level of stress to be just as high, but very different, because it feels like the type of guilt is different. Because when I was taking some time off being an employed resource in the company, I always felt like I owed it to someone, and then it felt always a little bit awkward. So I should be working, I'm paid for that. Am I being looked at and checked on LinkedIn, on Slack and stuff before not being connected or online? And now, if I take the time off, it feels like the only person I'm impacting is really myself, right?
It's me as well, Mick. It's me as well.
And our investors, obviously.
And our customers. There's a lot more.
Yeah, no, but the repercussion is more centered to me, as opposed to feeling like I owe it to someone. And it's a different type of stress, because there's also no one else to blame, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything that happens because one of us is doing it, and that's it. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen because one of us is failing at it. So there's no one to blame. Do you find this to be the same, or do you feel like it's actually a negative side of entrepreneurship?
I think when you if you're doing consultancy and things, like a lot of my income comes from consultancy at the moment, which supports me and supports development of the product. I'm lucky that I enjoy doing what I do, but I sparingly take time off, because time off means less money. You don't get holiday pay or anything like that. So it's it's not all greener on the other side. There are definitely benefits to working for yourself and doing your own thing. But there's definitely times when you work for yourself and you're building your own company where you do think, oh man, having a salary is good and someone pays me
Yeah.
days, those kind of things.
Bit of healthcare, pension.
Bit of healthcare, yeah. So yeah, it's not all rosy, but do you know what? Time will tell how rosy things will be if this picks up or not.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things you said earlier on that I just wanted to circle back to before we had moved off topic was when we were talking about who should do what within the expansions. You mentioned, well, it depends on who has the ability to have that commercial conversation, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the determining factors into who should speak, when they should speak, and how people are compensated. And back in the day, it used to be like you were a hunter or you were a farmer.
Yeah,
that was it, right? So if you're a hunter, you went into sales. If you're a farmer, you went into CS, and there was no gray area in between that. And now we've got to a position where a lot of those people who may have been 100% farmers, they've progressed through their careers and now they're leading these CS teams and they're leading these AM teams. Do you think that having that commercial acumen is something that can be taught, or is it something that is inherently within you and that's what makes you better at it?
I think all sales can be taught. I think there's an element of you've got to have people skills. You've got to be like emotionally intelligent, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people in CS do have people skills. They have really good people skills. They're problem solvers. But yeah, absolutely. I genuinely think over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've developed my sales skills because I've gone and done some sales training and it makes sense to me, right? You know where to push and why to push. Taking some sales methodologies, right? So if you were to take MedPick, for example, understanding what that is, you go through the training and you're like, this makes sense. It's actually really logical as to why people why people buy. And then you change your phrasing, your terminology, what to look for, even down to you're not being afraid to talk to a salesperson about an expansion opportunity because you might just do a very basic BANT qualification. You've already done it, right? And you know what they're looking for. You also know what questions they're going to ask. I also did some training a couple of years ago called backbone training. That was brilliant. It was very American. Like it was over the tops and it was whoops and yeehaws and lots of point scoring for answering questions and things, but it did genuinely make it fun. But it taught you about the different types of buyers and the position you can be in the negotiation. And it spoke about give gets and things. Again, it's all of the things that maybe the hunters just know these naturally, historically speaking. You just of course, like if you want me to give you a discount, I'm going to take something away from what I'm offering. Right? Maybe that some people just logically think about that and they're naturally good at sales. But if you explain it to someone who hasn't thought about it in that way in the past, they'll go, of course, that makes sense.
Yeah,
of course. And then down to the terminology, I listen to I watch a lot of stuff from like Jeremy Minor. I think it's what's his company, 7 something. He's brilliant, right? It's just changing your terminology and your phrasing about when you're questioning someone is going to change the response they get and how they feel about giving you that information. So yeah, I really do think that a lot of sales can be taught to people, especially if you've got that initial ability to make friends.
Yeah. Mick, you just sent me a post yesterday about phrasing questions.
Yeah, Chris Hall, guy from Gong, is quite
okay.
It's very well known for having launched Gong from, I think it's like 200K to 200 million ARR.
Yeah.
His whole thing is around asking the right questions, but formatting them in the right way as well. Another resource, Skip Miller, Selling Above and Below the Line. he speaks about time traveling question, which I'm really bad at, but is what would be the consequence of not doing anything in 6 months time, and or is there a ripple effect on other teams from you being behind target kind of things?
What you're trying to do is, if you can see that the customer's got a problem or may have a problem, get them to think in a way that, they'd go, you're just changing their point of view, or you're positioning your point of view. And if you've got the trust, they will bend and have a look at things from your perspective and go, oh, I can see that could be a problem actually coming up, right? Yeah. Straight away there, you've opened the door to, I can solve this problem for you.
Yeah, it's so convenient to ask tactical questions as opposed to strategic questions. That it's always the fallback is, hey, are you suffering from this? Yes, no. What's the pain? What's the personal consequence? So like, oh, really? I've just met you. Like, I don't really want to speak about this. Versus, that question around what's the ripple effect of not doing it on other teams in the business. It kind of elevates the conversation just by nature.
Yeah.
Just last question. We can wrap up. But have you found any good methodologies to align CSMs and account managers internally? So Peak is very much, I find, very much new business. But it's very much SDR and then kind of prospection, qualification.
I haven't found something that's like a CS sales methodology yet.
Yeah. Winning
maybe there's an opportunity there. The three of us just come up with it.
There you go.
Have you heard of winning by design?
I have heard of that one. I haven't read that.
It's becoming big because I've not looked into it too much, but I think the promise is that you don't look at the methodology by stage in that journey. It's throughout, all the way from marketing to churn, basically, because eventually, like, you do lose the client to some, either you get acquired or whatever. Like, that's the end of the journey. And it's about aligning and having like not an attribution model, but a model that picks up all the information throughout the process.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have a read of that one.
Winning by design. Yeah.
If you want to go from good to great, listen to this episode. So there you go. Richard, we've got a bit of a closing tradition on here. The question is, if you think about your whole career to date, what is your best memory so far and why?
Good question. I think so. A couple of years ago, I was head of customer experience for EMEA for Yellowfin, right? They're a BI company based in Melbourne. We had offices like in Australia, there was like Melbourne, and then there was Milton Keynes, right? I mean, it's not even London, right? It's Milton Keynes. I'm not knocking Milton Keynes. I live here and I love it. And then you had like a one in Japan, and then in Sleepy Ketchum in Idaho in the States. I loved my time with those guys. Like, I grew a lot as well, because that was when I started to do some of the sales training as well, and I was starting to grow from a commercial perspective. Like, I've always been quite good at just kind of helping people solving problems. But yeah, that's where I certainly got a lot of my commercial acumen from, and met some great people there. A lot of which I'm still in contact with. So yeah, loved my time over there.
Awesome. Brilliant. Well, look, Richard, it has been a privilege to have you on the show. Very insightful conversation.
Thanks for having me.
And for joining us. This has been another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.